that's what culture is. We've defined it. It's really important. CEOs care about it. Companies spend thousands of dollars on it. It can cost you your job, or you won't get hired because you don't fit in with it. How do we learn about it?
Usually like in the orientation when you're...
Okay, so one way is through the orientation. You go through some sort of socialization process, and then they tell you stuff, and then you work there. How else do you learn about the culture of an organization?
Do you research on the company, I guess?
Right. Do most of you do research on the companies that you apply for before you interview?
Yes.
You at least want to know if you want to work.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you use your social network to find out maybe someone who's worked there or works there? Yeah, use whatever you can to learn as much as you can about the organization. Like when I applied for a job at IBM, I researched the company. I knew people had worked there. I talked to them. And then when I got there, I watched what happened. You know, I was there, like I like to say, during 3 periods: old school IBM, a transition period, and then newer IBM. Old school IBM was like this: a dark suit. We can't tell I have a dark blue suit, white shirt, conservative tie. Okay. Now my boss, who I mentioned before, who had been head of testing and selection at IBM for 25 years, used to tell stories about what would happen if you showed up to work dressed inappropriately. So, for example, if you weren't wearing an acceptable tie, some managers would come by and cut off your tie with scissors. This is true. They would cut your tie off and send you home to get a new one. She told us stories. Like, so what? Well, if you look at research on cultures, storytelling is one of the ways in which culture is conveyed in an organization. I was at IBM went through changes. We went from having our own offices to an open workplace environment, from dressing like this to business casual. The old building that we were in was beautiful. It used to be owned by Nestle, but it was too opulent for IBM. It had a car wash for executives. IBM ripped out the car wash, not IBM. It almost ripped out the marble entryway because it's really opulent, but it cost so much money to do it, so they didn't. You walk into the building, you walk around, you didn't see people chatting. Okay, that's not how things went. If you want a meeting, you have a meeting. If you want to socialize, the time to socialize was lunchtime. Most everyone ate in the cafeteria. They had good foods, fortunately, and that's the time you chat with your colleagues on a social level. You want to have a meeting, again, you have a meeting, you keep your doors open, come at 7, stay till 6, or 7 to 7, Monday through Friday. So now I told you some aspects of the culture there. Do you really understand the culture where I worked?
No.
No. I gave you a little bit of it. I gave you some little pieces, but culture is a really deep phenomenon, and it exists on several levels. Many levels. Some levels are easy to see and easy to change, down to core beliefs about human beings. So let's talk about levels of organizational culture. And there are different ways to talk about levels of culture. We'll just use this one. So the first level, the level that's hardest to see and hardest to change, the deepest level, hardest to see, hardest to change, is called shared assumptions. Shared assumptions are basic beliefs about human beings, and ergo, about employees. So you've basic beliefs about human beings, and that's about employees. So you've taken psychology, philosophy classes. If I actually complete the sentence, people are basically, and you might say good. Okay, so human beings are basically good. So translated to organizations, employees are basically good. They're hardworking. They're motivated. You as a manager just need to give them direction, and they'll work hard. That's pretty much how employees generally are. Or people, human beings, are basically evil. So employees are basically bad. They're going to waste your time, waste your money, so you got to watch them and keep track of them because that's what they do. These are basic beliefs about human beings that translate to basic beliefs about employees. And these basic assumptions are important, these shared assumptions, because we talked about top-down processing. They guide how we interpret events. If I see an employee kind of staring off in the distance at his or her desk, how do I interpret that? Well, if I view people as wasting my time and money, I got to watch them. I'm like, hey, daydreamer, do I pay you to stare off in the distance? Get to work. Because that's how my lens through which how I view his or her behavior. Versus they're taking a break. They've been working really hard, or they're thinking of a solution to a problem. My shared assumption will guide how I interpret their behavior. Let's see, what else can we say about it? Systems are put in place based on these assumptions. If you think employees are going to mess around and waste your time and money, do you think you're going to put in systems and to watch them, to make sure they don't waste your time and money?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I'll keep track of you. I'll watch you because if I don't, you're going to steal and waste my money, do stuff like that. Did we get to A? This is one Roman numeral 2. There's only one level for organizational culture, not one level to culture. And also, the thing about this is it's also self-reinforcing. If you treat employees like children, how might they act?
Like
Children.
So you can see it can be self-reinforcing. And a bunch of examples I can give to you. Here's one I like. I think it was in Bloomberg Business Week. Not that one, but this one here. It says, flaws in the selfish worker theory, how the fallacious notion that people are motivated solely by self-interest hurts business. So one of the examples the article gives is REI. Now, I think most of you know what REI does. What does REI make?
Isn't it like outdoor camping?
Exactly. They make outdoor stuff. So they're talking about REI and REI's culture. And they say this. They have a highly engaged and committed workforce in both their corporate headquarters and 106 retail stores. Shrink in the retail world is a euphemism for people stealing stuff, shoplifting by both customers and employees. REI's shrink rate is far below industry standards, and employees instead are allies in preventing customer theft. REI credits this to its culture, which is based on the view that most people can be trusted to act in a company's interest. Many companies say people are our greatest asset, but don't behave that way. REI does, and it shows. So you see a shared assumption here, right? So this article is talking about REI's culture, and the level of culture that it's talking about is this basic belief about employees, that employees can be trusted. Okay, so this article talks about culture, and the level of culture that it's talking about is a shared assumption. Interesting. There we go. All right. Questions about this level of culture. It's the deepest, hardest to see, hardest to change. But if you think about companies you work for, you can probably remember, well, what was their basic belief about us as employees? How were we treated? What was the assumption? Any questions about this level? Hardest to see, hardest to change. You can't walk into a company and just like see it like you can look at whether or not someone's wearing a tie. All right, the next level, still hard to see and hard to change, but not as hard to see and hard to change as shared assumptions, is cultural values. Values are beliefs, feelings, assumptions about what's important, what's normal, what's rational. So assumptions, feelings, beliefs about what's important, what's normal, what's valuable. What does your company value? I don't know. Those are its values. Your company may value innovation or something, or change, or creativity, or speed, or quality, or what's important to your company? What do people value? Give you some examples. When I was working at IBM, I would sometimes travel across the country, and I'd be meeting with employees. And here's something that we would hear from employees. Some employees would say, "I've got blue blood in me." What do you think that meant? You think it meant they had a blood disorder? I have blue blood in me. What do you think they're saying? When they tell us that, what are they saying?
They have an IBM.
Right, like they are IBM. Like I have blue blood in me. Like IBM is known as Big Blue. So like I'm loyal to this company. Like I'm an IBMer for life. So that's loyalty. And there used to be something called job security. I know you're like, what? Those words go together? You have to look it up. So loyalty, my company takes care of me. I'm loyal to my company. My IBM takes care of me. That's loyalty, job security. Those are things that we heard talking to employees. We mentioned like innovation. Google is very innovative. It's known to value innovation. 3M has a lot of, Post-it notes and all these other things, creative things that 3M has come up with. Do I still have blue blood? I mean, I love IBM. I love working there, but it's yellow. All right. So anyway, right. I have Cal State Long Beach blood, whatever. Yeah, there you go. All right. I'll give you another example, kind of a sad example, from Zappos. So the CEO died. Unfortunately, this is an old interview in 2010 that's been published again because he died, I think, last week, unfortunately, from a fire. Anyway, I'll play a little bit of this so you can get an idea of some values here.
To step lively and fashionable, not when an online retailer is walking all over conventional wisdom in the shoe business. Our cover story is reported by Erin Moriarty of 48 Hours.
What if once a year your company holds a bald and blue day? If you want to show company spirit, you can either shave your hair or dye it blue. And imagine if one of the people shaving his head is your boss.
You're not nervous at all shaving the boss? So he can hold the blade for you.
Welcome to the rather wacky world of Zappos.com. It's an online shoe and merchandise company where business as usual is anything but. I like it. At a time when many retailers are struggling, Zappos, derived from the Spanish word for shoes, zapatos, is thriving.
I'm sorry, I have to stop it. But what in the world are zapatos? I know what zapatos are, but I know the word, but that pronunciation was so bad. Anyway.
Thanks in part to a unique company culture and its 36-year-old CEO, Tony Hsieh.
What did I do? No, I knew what the word zapatos means, but the way that she said it was just, it was just horrible. This was on, no one could say never mind.
Everyone's a little weird somehow, and so it's really hopefully just that. Everyone's a little weird somehow, and so it's really more just a fun way of saying that we really want people's true personalities to shine in the workplace.
Tony Hsieh so believes he's learned how to create both passion and profits that he's outlined his philosophy in delivering happiness.
The book is another way to help spread the message that it's possible to actually make employees happy, make customers happy, and still make investors happy, and still have profits.
He's not kidding. Zappos is now so successful that last fall Amazon paid $1.2 billion to acquire it. Tony Shea, who works out of a cubicle and earns as CEO less than $37,000 a year.
All right, so you can go watch the article, which hopefully has better pronunciation of Spanish words. But he's well known for culture, like the culture that he's obviously being a successful CEO when he was the CEO there. But he had a lot of. They came up with this core values they called the 10 Commandments of Zappos. And so, values like being humble and creating fun little weirdness. And he did a lot of different things, but this would be the level of culture that is cultural values. All right, any questions about cultural values before I move on to the next level? All right, I can't some of the things you type in, I don't understand. So anyway, yeah, a couple weeks ago or last week, I can't remember exactly when it was. It was very unfortunate. All right, the next level is shared behaviors. Now, I don't have a definition. I didn't type out a definition here because it means norms. So what is it okay to do or not okay to do at your company? I don't know. That's part of your culture. Like that article said, we saw in the beginning, is it okay to question your boss? I don't know. You tell me, is it okay for you to question your boss publicly? So someone says yes.
Depends.
It depends. So like, no, not really. So, right, that article, like the article talked about, some places it's okay, some places it's not. It depends on the culture of your organization. I can show you articles where one company takes over the other company, and the employees in the company that have been taken over, they sit in the meeting, they don't take anything when the boss asks whether or not they're questions, because where they're from, you don't do that. And then after the meeting, people have to tell them it's okay, like you can ask questions. So different cultures and organizations, what's okay to do and not okay to do. And in some cultures, is questioning an authority figure publicly particularly bad?
Yes.
Yeah, in some parts of the world, that's particularly bad. So these are norms. What is it okay to do and not okay to do? And it's really at the level of what actually happens, right? Because companies say a lot of things. Your boss might say, yeah, you can ask me whatever. But you learn, no, don't ask him or her anything. Like, you'll lose your job. There are companies that say, like, here's one. This company had repeated OSHA violations, and then someone took a picture outside that says, but they have this up that says safety isn't a slogan, it's a way of life. And yet they had like tons of OSHA problems. So again, it's what a company actually does, not what it says. What are its norms? The last level of culture, which is the most superficial, the easiest to change, is cultural symbols. So symbols are a bunch of things. They can be words that people use, like vocabulary terms. It can be gestures, pictures that they have, office layout. Is your office in Manhattan? Is it, in Orange County? Is it downtown LA? What's your building look like? What does your office space look like? How do people dress? How do people talk? This is a very superficial level of culture, which is obviously easy. We went from hardest to see, hardest to change, shared assumptions, to now we get to the level that, well, this is easy to see, easy to change. You can see how people dress. You can see whether or not you're sharing a cubicle with someone. You can look at logos and things like that. This is the level that's the most superficial. Words, pictures, gestures, symbols, something that carries meaning in the culture. So for example, when I worked at IBM, when we would meet different people from different divisions, we would shake their hand. That's how we would, well, not now. I mean, no one touches anyone now, but then, like, we would shake each other's hands. I have a friend who's a vice president of leadership consulting firm, and I haven't spoken to him since the Me Too movement and the pandemic, but they used to greet people with hugs. No, not for me. Like, last thing I'd want to do is hug a colleague. But anyway, but that was just how they greeted people there. Like language. So, you work for a company, you have to learn the vocabulary, especially those of you who worked in the military, or like, I know some of you served in the military. You've got your own language. When I worked for the military as a civilian, I had to learn the vocabulary, like a different language. I remember when I started at IBM, I was at a meeting and my main boss, Pat, started talking about, we need to shift our focus from blue dollars to green dollars. And so I left the meeting and I asked one of my coworkers what specifically she meant. You probably can figure it out. I couldn't figure it out at the time. Do you know what our boss was saying? Focus on green dollars, not blue dollars, not blue dollars. Nadie sabe? No one knows? No guesses?
Real money?
Well, kind of real money, right. So what she meant was, let's focus our efforts on and our time on making money outside of IBM. Blue dollars was money that we made doing HR type stuff within IBM. But let's start to shift our focus away and start consulting. Because what was happening was IBM was going through changes and we're getting a new CEO and all that stuff. And this is even before it happened, but she's like, I know what's going to happen. So let's start making sure we're viable outside of IBM. I mean, we thought we had power. We thought we were fine because no one else did what we did. So we thought we were irreplaceable. Not in a pompous way, but you read the chapter on culture or about power, about irreplaceability. But we're like, we're not going to rest on that. We don't want to be overconfident. So we started doing HR services, consulting HR services, and making green dollars. Like, this is old school IBM, the way I'm dressed. Interesting. Like, this is a cultural symbol. When our new CEO came, so it was a tense time at IBM. I was sitting, like, we would be sitting in our offices and we can see covers of magazines saying the demise of Big Blue, like the demise of IBM. And so it's kind of disconcerting when you're, working for the company and you're seeing covers of magazines saying your company's done for. Anyway, so we get a new CEO and he gives his first speech to us, just internally to IBM employees. It was a very tense time. So employees were gathered all over the US, like in conference rooms and auditoriums, and we were all just kind of standing in the hallway, and they had these pillars, and they had TVs on the pillars. And so we're all just standing in the hallway watching his first speech to us. So we stood there, and he kind of talked about his vision and changes he's going to make at IBM. So we stood there and watched what he said, and then we walked back to our offices. And people talked about what he said. Do you know what else they talked about? Any guesses? They not only talked about what he said, but what?
What he was wearing?
Very good, what he was wearing. What was he not wearing?
A suit.
He's wearing, wasn't it? No, not, you guys did a good guesses. He was wearing a tie. What color shirt was he not wearing?
Black?
White. Now, who cares? So why would people who live in New York, who are executives who have so much to lose, care at all about the fact that he was not wearing a white shirt? What did that signify to them?
That he wasn't blue. What did you call it? Like he wasn't like them?
He was an outsider. Right, that signified change. He was an outsider. Not blue blood. Well, I don't know. I mean, he made a lot of good changes at IBM. He was wearing I remember distinctly, he's wearing a red and white striped shirt. Don't worry, the stripes were this way versus this way, so, slimming. But people talked about what he was wearing, the fact that he was wearing a white shirt, like he was an outsider. Now, I have no idea if Gershner thought about it before he gave his speech to us. I mean, it's a big moment to give a speech to like this new company that you become the CEO of. But I don't know if he thought about it. Like, anyway, but it sent a message to people, whether it's intentional or not. Because dress is a symbol. It can mean something. I mean, you're a business student, so you know, like, I don't need to tell you about dressing appropriately for interviews. I mean, I've seen what happens when you don't. So this one guy totally lost the interview as soon as he walked up. As soon as he walked through the doors, done. So he showed up in a powder blue suit with black shoes that seemed kind of like Reeboks. And like a wedding singer, this is from Dumb and Dumber. He didn't have a top hat or a cane. Yeah, it was a very bold choice, so you have to admire him for that. So he had black shoes and he had a tie and a white shirt, but just the suit was just. Now I felt bad for the guy because I knew him. Like he came from the same program that I did. And we got the same monthly check for being graduate students, which is like next to nothing. But I went out and I had a credit card and went out and bought a suit for my interview. I don't know why I didn't do that, but he was dead in the water. And managers were pissed. They were upset. Like we spent all this time we were looking through resumes. We phone interviewed the guy. We flew him out to New York. We put him up in a hotel, taxis, all that stuff. And he shows up looking like that. And it's like, you don't understand who we are, the level of professionalism, etc. Anyway. All right. So this is a level that's obviously the most superficial. Easy to see, easy to change. Any questions about levels of culture? All right, so let's kind of review then what we talked about. Here's what we basically said. Here's a visual way to talk about what we talked about. So the first thing we talked about, these are levels of culture, is shared assumptions. Shared assumptions that's the deepest level, that inner circle, the deepest level, hardest to see, hardest to change. And then we went from there to easiest to see, easiest to change. So shared assumptions, again, basic core beliefs about human beings. People are basically good, people are basically bad, therefore employees are basically good, bad, etc. And then the next level, still deep, hard to see, hard to change, is cultural values, assumptions, feelings, beliefs about what's important, what's normal, what's rational. It's a big deal here. Then we go to shared behaviors, which correspond to what's it okay to do or not okay to do, what are norms. And then finally, the most superficial level, easy to see, easy to change, superficial stuff like how you dress, where your office is, office layout, stuff like that. How you greet one another, language that you use. That's the most superficial level, called cultural symbols. Like, and you can change symbols, but I mean, that's just, you can't change a culture by just changing symbols. There's a lot of levels you have to get to. It's hard to do. It takes years. I mean, when I was at IBM, we switched and we went from an open workplace environment we went to an open workplace environment. So I went from dressing like this to business casual and staring at a cubicle, which I hated. I left IBM after that, but not because of that. But I mean, I spent all this money on suits and ties, and now I have to buy a whole new wardrobe. And now I also have to share a cubicle with my coworker and listen to. It's not good for productivity. Anyway, I mean, so they changed how we dress. They changed our office. It didn't change. We're still IBM. The culture hadn't changed. These are some of the changes that they were making. All right.
Have you seen my?
So I'll give you. an option here. The option is to watch a funny video or listen to me lecture. I have no idea which one you're going to choose. I mean, it's a tough choice, but so let me tell you something. It's an older video. I know it's 1986. You're like, there was an 86 lecture. Yeah. Okay. It's an old video of 1986 of David Letterman. Do you know who David Letterman is?
Yeah, the talk night host.
Yeah, he was a talk show host. Retired. He's got a show on Netflix, which is popular. He interviews like President Obama and Jay-Z and a bunch of people. So this video clip is old. I think it's funny. We'll see whether or not you think it's funny. So it's Late Night with David Letterman. This is when Letterman was on NBC. And this is 86. I think the same year that, this video clip is the same year I think that Frank Vogel, the Lakers coach, was on Late Night with David Letterman doing like superhuman tricks. But anyway, that's for like Lakers fans. So what happens in this clip is at this time when Letterman was working for NBC, NBC was acquired by GE, General Electric. And David Letterman's going to go to try to meet his new employer, the company that took over. He's going to go to try to meet people on the board of directors. So, and we'll watch the video and see what levels of culture we can see about GE from the video. Now, obviously, we're not going to be able to really understand the culture of GE from a couple minutes, but it's more of an exercise to apply this stuff. So let's see what happens.
You never know what you're in for when you get a brand new boss. So when General Electric bought this company, RCA and NBC, I thought I would drop by the General Electric building here in Midtown Manhattan, meet my new employers, kind of, get things off on the right foot. Watch what happens, won't you? Sometime last summer, it was announced that General Electric was going to be buying out and taking over the RCA Corporation. And of course, RCA is the company that owns NBC. And as you know, NBC is the company that I work for and the company that brings you all your favorite television programs. Well, sometime in August, I guess, the takeover will be complete. And we're all now getting a little curious as to what kind of effect it's going to have on, NBC as we know it today, the programming, and I guess specifically, how is it going to influence me? And what I'm really trying to get at here is, am I going to have a job? So this is the General Electric building, and, I have a little gift, and we thought, what the heck, let's just drop in and, say hello to see how it's going, and, they can't object to that, can they? Let me ring the bell here first before we go in. It's a pretty big building. It was built in 1931, and I believe it was originally the RCA building, and then later it became the General Electric building. Let me hit that bell again. Can we go in there? Yes, sir. We just wanted to drop off a little fruit basket and say hello to the folks on the board of directors. Can you hear me? Yes, ma'am. Hi, how are you?
I'm sure you're able to do this,
Why not?
because we haven't gotten the authorization.
Do you work for General Electric?
Yes, I do.
Are you on the board of directors?
No, no.
Oh. What is your name? Oh, no, come on. We just wanted to come over and say hello. We're going to be working together, and we want to get everything off on the right foot. We have this lovely basket of fruit. So do you mind if we come? Hi, what is your name?
We received the letter, okay, but we didn't get authorization.
We just can't. You mean we need authorization to drop off a fruit basket? To drop off a fruit basket? Yes. You need authorization. Oh, this is going to be fun to work with these people, isn't it? To drop off a fruit basket, you need paperwork.
Give me a minute, and I'll be right back.
Okay. All right. Just a minute here. And then, what is your name? Ramos, Orlando Ramos. And, we're working together now. That's nice. I like working with GE. That's good. Are they nice people? Good people. Good. Are they mean to you at all? Excuse me? Are they ever mean to you? No. Good people. Christmas bonuses? Good people. We'll drop off the basket. Okay. These are the people that we're going to be working with. Just go on in. I'll just go on in and see what happens. How are you? Dave Letterman. Nice to meet you. What is your name? I'm going to ask you to turn the cameras off, please. Okay, we just wanted to drop off this basket of fruit. Is it cameras, please? It's a gesture of goodwill. How's it going to work out for us? I think you could say it's, still too early to tell for sure. But we're kind of optimistic, and right. They did seem to enjoy that fruit basket, so we'll just have to wait and see. We have to read something here. There you have it, my visit to General Electric. We actually got to know their security team, and it turns out they're pretty nice guys. They were just doing their job. I was just doing my job, and we'll probably be doing a lot of hunting and fishing together this summer. Now, by the way, one other thing you should keep in mind, that last blast from the bullhorn was not from General Electric. It was just some passing lunatic. Now, as you watch that, maybe you didn't realize that we got to see a glimpse of the official General Electric handshake. Hal, can we take a look at what the corporate handshake looks like? You can see it now. The security gentleman is about to shake. There you go. Now let's take a look at the. Here it is in slow motion now. The General Electric corporate handshake. Get a good look at it because. We thought perhaps that was an isolated episode, but later the gentleman was introducing himself to our director, Mr. Hal Gertner. Hal, show him that, and we'll see if we can't isolate the corporate handshake again from the folks at GE. Comes over. There's Hal. Nope. All right, let's take a look. Take a look at that one now. Again, in slow motion. Here it is, the last time you'll see it on the show. The official General Electric corporate handshake. I don't think so. Okay.
All right, so there it was. I think it's a funny clip. Let's take a look at it and apply what we talked about to it. So if we go to shared assumptions, basic beliefs about human beings, about human nature, and we look at that, what might we say GE's was towards about GE? So again, we can't know for sure, obviously. We're just watching a couple minute clip.
Maybe that they're distrustful of outsiders.
Sure. Well, I mean, right, you can't trust people.
Right.
Like, can't trust people, can't trust human beings, employees, whatever. Can't trust people. So that could be a shared assumption. What about a cultural value? Feelings, assumptions, and beliefs about what's important, what's normal, what's rational. No fun allowed. All right. So did it seem kind of strict?
It seems like they follow protocol.
Okay. So rule, order. Did it seem conservative?
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe conservatism, law, rule, order, those maybe values, very formal, like you said. All right, what about shared behaviors? What is it okay to do and what is it not okay to do? He did something that wasn't okay to do, which was what?
Show up unannounced.
Show up unannounced. To drop off a fruit basket, what do you need?
Clearance.
Right, you need clearance, right? You need paperwork. So, right. So he went against the norms. I mean, it's the funny thing about Letterman. He did that a lot on his show, but he went against the norms of, the company. And now the key cultural symbol that I wanted you to remember from this video was what? The cultural symbol, the most superficial one.
Is it the handshake?
Yeah, it was a GE corporate handshake. Someone said on the group chat they were practicing social distancing really early on. So yeah, the GE corporate handshake, but we also saw a lot of other things. We saw the way people dress. We saw how we saw the inside of the building. We know it's in Midtown Manhattan. We saw the building. You saw the logo. Those are all superficial things. Those are all cultural symbols. Right, shaking hands, a handshake is the cultural symbol. Is a cultural symbol in the video.
Think my phone is on top of the
All right,
table.
so questions.
How many more Zoom meetings do you have?
This is for probably one more after this.
Un sec. Preguntas, nadie? ¿Hay preguntas?
No, we don't. I'm just recording it. I'm taking notes,
Well, yeah. I mean, you saw the handshake. That was a cultural symbol. The way people were dressed. I mean, people that worked there, they were dressed formally. I mean, you saw people that were like inside a little bit, and some of them were dressed informally, but they weren't employees. They were. I don't know if they were. All right. So I have other stuff to talk about, but it's going to take longer than we have. I can't really get into it and then stop since we only have like 8 minutes left. Any other questions about anything? Any slides you want me to go back to? Anything like that?
I have a question. How do you differentiate between social assumption and social behavior? Because it sounds really similar to me.
You mean shared assumptions and shared behaviors?
Yes.
Okay. So shared assumptions are like, it's like a lens through which I interpret and view other people's behavior, like top-down processing. It's how my basic beliefs about human beings and human nature. Okay. So that's our belief. People who work here, this is what we feel about like management. This is what we feel about employees. That employees are going to mess around. So we got to watch them. We got to keep track of them. I got to keep my eye on you. Make sure that you're not messing around and stealing stuff and doing the right thing. Those are assumptions. And if I think you're going to mess around, then I will watch you. I'll monitor you. I may treat you like you're going to do something wrong, which may cause you to do something wrong. And it affects how I interpret your behavior. Like telecommuting, like forget the pandemic. The pandemic is, but think before the pandemic, telecommuting was like some people are like, I don't know, it's another way for employees to waste my time and money, right? Because the assumption was if you're at home, you're not going to work. Now, obviously, we know that some people can be quite effective from home. Although I think a lot of us would just like to let's leave home. Shared behaviors are what is it okay to do or not okay to do. So they're norms. So like David Letterman, it was not okay to drop off a fruit basket. That said nothing about basic beliefs about without authorization. That had nothing to do about basic beliefs about human beings. I mean, you can see that there's some sort of cascading, but it's what is it okay to do or not okay to do at your company. My company may be very formal, but it may be okay for me to question my boss publicly. Okay, that would be a shared behavior. That would be different than the shared assumption. I worked at a formal company, and it was very structured, very formal. But some companies that are big companies, you can just pop in and knock on someone's office door. That's okay. Some companies, no, you need to make an appointment first. So that has nothing, and those companies may have beliefs about, like IBM's beliefs about its employees, at least where I worked, were, hardworking, honest, motivated. Those are shared assumptions. But in terms of shared behaviors, you should make it, we typically didn't pop in. We typically call the person, send them an email, and set up an appointment to talk with them. Accountants are boring, shared behaviors. Shared assumptions are that, not necessarily that accountants are boring. I mean, they are. No, I'm just kidding. But a shared assumption is that, again, it goes at a deeper level. That people are good, people are bad, those types of things. In an organization, and behaviors is what is it okay to do or not okay to do at your work. Again, they're different. Like, I can think employees are valuable and will make good choices and are honest and hardworking. But still say you have to have an appointment first, or still say and have these other things that are okay to do or not okay to do that you may think it runs contrary to the shared assumptions. I mean, because this is really complex. A shared assumption is basically about human beings, about human nature, and then we go out in concentric circles to these other levels. But a symbol may be one thing for you may see someone dressed like this and say not creative. Okay, this cultural symbol. But I have friends that worked at IBM that were like super creative. Like, and they dress like, I have friends that dress like nerds. Like, they literally had pocket protectors. And my one friend, his pants were too high. And he didn't have like tape on his glasses or something like that. But he was no less creative. So that's a symbol. He was no less creative than a friend of mine who had his own company, a software development company, a game company, where he employees dressed in t-shirts and shorts and had played hacky sack and had video games everywhere and pinball machines. They had animals that were lost. Like, someone had a pet snake and it was lost in the building. Now, they were no more creative than my nerdy friends. I know, like, how nerdy is it if I'm calling someone nerdy? So these things can be different, and the interpretation of these things can be different. So you've asked like a really complex question. So I hope I got into it a little bit. Any other questions? We have a couple minutes.
Not for me. Thank you, Professor.
All right, so I'll hang around for a couple minutes. So if not, please be safe, and I'll see you on Wednesday, and we'll talk about your test. So hang around, otherwise be safe. Thank you.